Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, I am even more excited than normal because we get to have one of my friends and amazing business financial coaches. She has been part of my life for a really long time.
Yeah.
She's an author that I've known for a long time, writes amazing books that we will talk about a little bit later. She is the proprietress and ringmaster of Creatopia, and she is the amazing owner of the Numbers Whisperer. She is the Numbers Whisperer, and she has a gift of helping people, specifically people in the spiritual realm, but people of all different realms, figure out how to do finances, figure out how to change their mindset around finances. She has worked with me for years on that, and I am so stinking grateful to her. But I've seen how she works with other people. I've seen how she asks people to step into a higher level of knowing for themselves and their finances, and how she handles things herself. And I am so stinking excited to introduce Nicole Fende to you, because I know that there's people out there that are going to get so much out of this interview. And so I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
Yes, thank you.
Wow, that's an amazing introduction. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and I even said proprietress right.
You
Oh,
had
you
to
did, so
try
correct.
again, didn't you?
You tempted fate.
That's what I do. So one of the things that we really want to talk about with you today is how finances and spirituality, now I can't even say that word, how those come together. Because one of the things that I've learned from you, and one of the things that we've talked about a lot, is how when people have specific blocks in their mindset or specific blocks in their life, it affects them in different areas. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about how you work with people and how you believe finances connect to your spirituality.
Well, first I would say when I work with people, it's on an individual basis. And I do that because these are very unique and to ourselves issues and blocks that we may have. Unfortunately, our world has created a lot of negative energy around numbers and finance and money. I like to start by saying money is just a tool. Way back when people didn't have money, they had chickens. And,
And those
I'm
were
not
also
kidding.
a tool.
They had chickens, and they'd be like, okay, I have all this grain. How many chickens will you give me? Of course, that was incredibly inconvenient to walk around with a bunch of chickens in your cart. So we humanity came up with something to represent the chickens. And what's gotten lost is what it represents. And so people are hung up thinking money has some, it has emotion, or it has value, or it has good or evil connotations to it. Money simply is a tool. And I always start there. Money is a tool. And we humans put value on it and put emotion or shame or whatever. We put it on money. Money is a tool. So I would ask you, when you start looking at money, saying money is the root of all evil, are chickens the root of all evil?
Maybe.
Keep your
No,
labels to
I
yourself.
don't think so.
According
I
to
don't
my
think so.
husband, he thinks they're creepy.
Well, okay, they might be.
Just
But they're not. It is a tool. So I like to start with people talking about what is money and what isn't it. And so we can start to separate your feelings and emotions and what money is and isn't, right? So we've got chickens are not evil, except Tammy's husband thinks so. That's okay. Most people don't. And so it's a tool. Now, we put a lot onto this tool, and we may carry things from past experiences, past lives, wherever it comes from. We generally carry baggage. Everyone, including me, carries baggage around finance and numbers. So then it's a matter of, okay, we need to start addressing that. What I like to tell people is, when you perform a service for someone, you are giving them a piece of yourself, whether or not you think way, right? If you're performing a reading, Jen, or for me, if I'm performing a financial analysis, it's a piece of myself. I've put my own energy into that and sent it to that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all do. For anything you do, you cannot help but have a piece of yourself in the things you touch in your life. So we're sending that to someone, and that's not an unlimited supply, right? I can't keep doing that just all day long into infinity and be fine. Eventually the well is dry. And as you guys, I love the episode you had about like the psychic vampires and like I don't know if they were called leeches or not, the things that attach to you, and great stuff. So we don't have an unlimited supply for that, right? What happens is when we give someone something, when we share of ourselves, we need to get something in return to keep balance in the world, keep balance in ourselves. Now, they're not going to hand us chickens because that could be very inconvenient. So what they do instead is they hand us money. Money, again, let's go back to the money as a tool. All that represents is work that they've done, energy they've expended. And so now it becomes an equal exchange, and it keeps balance, because we all know when you don't have balance, spiritually, emotionally, physically, whatever, nothing works. Everything gets out of line, and it's not healthy for you.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. It relates a lot to some of the Reiki training that I had for first level Reiki, where they talked about the exchange of energy. So exchanging goods, services, money for your service. That was exactly how they put it. It was an exchange of energy to create the balance, because that's what Reiki's all about. But that's cool that you described it that way too. Because it's true. You don't often think that you're putting a piece of yourself into these things, but especially with the people you work with, I'm sure you see that exponentially, because, generally they're carers, healers,
Yes.
people who put a lot into what they do.
Absolutely. And so what I often find is they have this guilt. That's one of the emotions. They have guilt attached with charging money. Yep. Tammy's raising her hand. Okay. Let's talk about that, because again, money is a tool, right? It's a tool. Do you feel guilty when you pick up a hammer and use it?
No.
Okay,
Well,
I mean, assuming you're not using it on a...
No.
Well, maybe if I'm hitting someone with it.
Okay. Wow, you guys
But
are
then I feel
violent.
guilty afterward.
Or you're using, okay, I was going to say a frying pan, but then I thought of Rapunzel when she uses a frying pan as
Anything
a weapon.
can be a weapon if you want it
That's
to be.
true. It's true. But, think about something you use in your everyday life. Right. And you pick it up and you don't feel guilty because you use your pen. Right. Or your mouse or your keyboard. You go, that's what it's there for. Right. It's to be used. So suddenly when it's us giving of ourselves and getting something in return, we're offering a service to get something back, to get a tool back. Suddenly there's shame or, there's guilt. And you have to ask, well, why is that? Is it because, and this gets into some of those things, those deep dives, is it because you feel like you're not worthy? Is it because you feel like your service isn't worthy? Is it because you're afraid if you charge for it, people won't like you as much? There's these questions that we suddenly start to have to face to get past it. Because the money itself is not evil. It is a tool, but it's a mirror too. And Jen, I've known Jen for years, and she'll talk about this. Some things are mirrors. It's a mirror to what you are trying to experience, or trying not to experience, I guess I should say, emotionally. And because you care, you want to help, you think, then there's the guilt. Well, if I'm helping, I shouldn't get anything back. You can't keep helping people if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah.
When you're on a plane and those air things drop, they're not muzzles. I'm having a word issue today. Anyway, those things you put over your face to get oxygen. Oxygen mask.
I'm going to start calling them air muzzles from now on.
Okay, when those air muzzles drop, What do they say? Put your own on first before you help the person next to you. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't have the strength, you won't have the emotional energy, won't have the resources to keep helping other people. You must take care of yourself.
So this is interesting because as a healing practitioner, as somebody in a helping profession, I've heard so many times, over and over and over again. Well, you were born with this. God gave you this gift. Source gave you this gift. You're meant to use it. You should be using it for free. You should be giving it away for free. And there are so many healers that I know that they've gone up against that when they're talking to new clients, when they're working with new people. It's like, well, if this is your God-given gift, you should be just giving it to people. And it's like, what do you say to that? In that moment, you're like, well, yeah, it is. But at the same time, God gave you the gift to do your job.
Right.
So it's one of those things that for some reason with healing professions and helping professions, that is a label that gets put on us. Like, you should be giving this away for free.
Well, and I do think it's part of our own mentality too. Certainly. I do remember, because I practice massage. And so I do remember in school having this whole conversation too about this exchange. And thankfully I had a very good instructor that was talking about setting up boundaries early on, right? You know, friends, family, everyone's going to come out of the woodwork. I've had people literally pick up my hand and put it on their shoulder and try to press my finger into their shoulder so I can find a knot on them. Random people I just met. People just sometimes don't have really good boundaries around that stuff.
Wow.
And thankfully I had good advice on that early on with this whole thing that somehow I was able to follow. But I do think when you're in a caring profession too, a lot of times, sometimes our own trauma leads us to be the type of people that over empathize or over put ourselves in people's shoes so much so that we care more about how they're doing than how we're doing. So there's always that thing that we have to keep in mind. But it does bring up this next question we were going to talk about, which we were kind of already talking about some of the financial mindset roadblocks that are also connected to spiritual roadblocks. Do you want to talk a little more about that?
I'd love to. And Jen hit on a couple of the common ones. For example, God gave you this gift. Well, God, spirit, the universe, whatever you want to say, this higher power gave each and every human being a gift. We all have gifts. Why are some worth money and some aren't? Like, you wouldn't go to a dinner party and ask a dentist, hey, can you look at my teeth? And say, but God gave you this gift, no teeth. I mean, I'm assuming it's somewhat of a gift, right? So you would not do that. And if you did, you would never get invited back to that party, that person. Certainly not my house. So why is it? You know, and I like to turn the question around because I can point things out to people. I can ask them leading questions. I can give them new perspectives. I can't fix it for them. So I would turn around and say, why are some gifts supposed to be free and others not? Why? And you could even say that to the person. Well, why is my gift free and a heart surgeon not? They're both healing, right? If we're going on orders of magnitude, I mean, my dad had open heart surgery. If he hadn't had it, he wouldn't be here. Well, I can tell you, heart surgeons make really good money.
Yes, they do.
Because he lives near my dad. So, and that's fine. I don't begrudge him that at all. So why? Because your gifts still take work. They still take training. They still take expertise. They still take practice and money invested. I would turn it around and say, well, why? What about those? Those aren't free. Either, if God gave us gifts, they should all be valued equally. So either we pay for them or we don't pay for them, period.
This right here is why I've been working with Nicole for years. Well, then she reminds me.
Yeah, it's good to have people who are willing to remind you of that, because I also think, I especially see it in my profession, a lot of us are like kind of flaky, and not in like the most insulting way, but in the most like, we care, we want to do this thing, like it's all going to work out or whatever, and then sometimes completely disregard the money piece of it. But if we're bringing it back to what you said earlier, where this is just an exchange of energy, I would think that makes a lot more sense to a lot of the people who are in these more woo type professions, because, certainly it doesn't feel great to expend a lot of energy and not have anything in return. And that's a great way to not only burn yourself out, but not be able to even do this thing that you should be doing to feed your soul
and long term.
all the people around you be helped as well, which totally makes sense to me.
I get asked this question, so I think it's helpful to, it translates well for you. I talk at a nonprofit conference every year, and I always get questions during or after, what is your nonprofit rate? And my answer to them is, my nonprofit rate is the same as every other rate. The reason why is I can't tell my mortgage company, can I have the nonprofit mortgage payment this month? I work with nonprofits this month. Can my mortgage be 80% of what it is normally? Because they would laugh at me, just like you're laughing. Right? They'd be like, ha, that was good, Nicole. No. So I say to them, I have to pay my bills. That's that equal exchange, right? And if I spend time with you versus someone else, I still have to pay the same mortgage payment. Now I'm going to take it one step further, because this is important. I also believe in giving back. So that nonprofit conference I speak at, I don't charge to speak at it, even though I am a paid speaker. Why? Because I set aside a certain amount of time and energy every year that I give back. That I've said, okay, I might have one person I help because I know their situation, and I will help them at a sliding scale because I've built it into my plan.
Sounds very intentional.
And it's very intentional, so I'm still sustainable as a whole. I say, okay, what can I do to give back? Some of it is I donate to Kiva. Some of it is I speak for free at this conference. I have planned what that is purposefully, intentionally. And when that amount is done, it's done for the year. And that way you can have, again, balance. I mean, every person I know that's involved in healing and the metaphysical world and all of that, they talk about balance, right? They talk about when things get really far out of whack, it's not healthy. Your finances are simply a representation of another part of your life. And it has to be in balance, or it'll throw everything else out of whack. Like if you had a car and 3 of the tires are all in alignment correctly, and one of them's at a 90-degree angle, what do you think is going to happen when you try to drive that car?
Crap, I'm screwed.
Yeah. And that's your finances.
Yeah.
Now, I am going to say one other thing. I see sometimes it almost seems like, we talked about the blocks, it almost seems like people take pride in that, well, I don't charge a lot. It's almost like this pride of being poor. The starving artist syndrome, which I come across a lot when I deal with creatives, the starving artist syndrome, like somehow being poorer or making less makes you a better person, or it's no, as long as it's equal, you don't overcharge. You don't go and say, I'm going to charge you $5,000 for a 1-hour massage. Probably not a realistic exchange of energy.
I mean, I'm good, but I don't know about that.
So
maybe someday.
It's a couple $100. Yeah, maybe someday. I'm just saying in general, it's probably not an equal exchange.
Yeah.
So having that, and that comes back to that mirror. Why? What is it about you internally that makes you feel you're not worthy? What is it about you internally makes you think it's not okay for me to make money? Because the money isn't evil. So what what's really going on inside of you, open that up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of work on financial beliefs lately. I've been working with several different people and looking at all of my internal beliefs, which there are many. And I've also been looking at where those things are stemming from. And I think part of this work is when you start working with somebody who can call you out on your stuff, like Nicole does. She's very good at that. She's very good at helping keep people accountable. Part of it is somebody's telling you, hey, you need to look at that. But then actually taking the time to sit down and go, okay, I'm recognizing that this belief is there. Where did that come from? Like, why am I holding on to that? Whose belief is it actually? Because I've been starting to recognize that a lot of my financial beliefs are not my beliefs. Like, I have a completely different belief, but I've been told over and over and over and over again by family members, by friends, by spiritual community, by different people around me, these other things. And at some point you start going, oh, well, maybe that's what I need to be doing. That's what I should be doing. And when push comes to shove, it's their belief, not yours. And so I think part of that is letting go of other people's crap and letting go of some of the things that you were told earlier in life or even later in life, and not taking to heart things that you don't truly believe. And so I think one of the questions that we have on here is for you to explain your philosophy around acknowledgement, gratitude, and letting go, and how that kind of feeds into other areas of your life. And I really want to hear what you have to say about this one.
So actually, and I will give a big shout out to Jen, who a couple years ago, I was in a place where I couldn't have a fire and I wanted to do something where I was writing things out and burning them, right? Releasing them. And she said, well, come to my place. And it turned into a much bigger thing in a great way. And that was years ago now. I think that was like, I don't know, 6 years ago. It was a long time ago. And it stuck with me because I think for the good and the bad. So her whole point to me, and I've taken it and run with it, is we have things in our past that are painful. We have things that have happened, like, Jen said, whose belief is this? We have beliefs that have been kind of shoved into our brain that we really don't want or like. But you can't just ignore them. That doesn't work. Because all you're doing is like trying to stick it off. It's like, the kid that like tries to clean their room by shoving everything in the closet and shutting the door, right? Eventually your parent opens the door and finds
that
the
was
mess,
under the bed
right?
for me. And eventually my mom was like, okay, how about you try again?
Right. It doesn't work. You have to do the work. So when you have things in your life that aren't great, trying to just sweep them into under the bed or in the closet won't fix it. It just delays it. And in my opinion, makes it even a bigger mess to clean later.
Right.
So what we do have to do is look at it and say, okay, this was crappy. And maybe the belief, a common one is, I believe that I have to work really hard for every dollar I make. That Midwestern get up at the crack of dawn or before work ethic, right? I have to work if I'm not working really hard, I haven't earned that dollar. Okay. And now you want to let go of that. That's not what's appropriate for you. You first have to acknowledge, where did it come from? Was it parents, society, wherever? And what were the good parts of it? Or what did it teach you? And be thankful for that. And what you may have learned, I had a boss early on in my career who was a terrible boss, terrible. And I finally had to tell myself, okay, what I got from that, because it was an awful experience, was I will never treat my employees this way. And I was able to accept that it happened because it embedded in me the ability, like in a core way, I will treat people differently. So for things that you are now actively saying, no, I don't want, acknowledging it and saying, I don't want that. This is where it came from. I accept that it was part of my life. It taught me X, Y, and Z, and it might be to do the exact opposite of that. That's fine. And let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen was saying she's facing some of her personal things by acknowledging, until you acknowledge it, that it's there, that mirror. What is that mirror telling you? What do you find yourself doing self-talk? A lot of times I'm on a call with someone and they're like, oh, I'm really bad at this. I'm like, stop saying that. I'm really bad at numbers. No, stop this negative self-talk. Where did it come from? A teacher, a parent, society? Okay. Maybe that was a defense mechanism. Acknowledge it helped you get through a tough time. Maybe you had a teacher who said, I had this. Girls can't do math. I had a math teacher say that to me. Hate to break it to you, I'm really good at math. So, but maybe just to get through it, you had to you started saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at it and say, okay, I did it at that time to simply survive. You are here today. So you did survive. Thank you for letting me survive. I don't need you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have new tools. I have better tools. I'm going to let you go.
I love that. We've talked previously that even kind of intersects with some of the inner child work we were talking about before. And
Yep.
my husband had a very traumatic childhood and has done a lot of work around that. But I always found it really interesting how when he would talk about, this inner child, sometimes how he could feel really negatively towards that little guy who kept getting in his way, and how his therapist and I would help bring him back to that. The little guy needs a hug is what the little guy needs. The little guy needs a hug and to understand, like, it's okay. I've got this now. And that's what his therapist really helped him with. Like, it's not about forcing that stuff away. It's about this piece of you needed to be acknowledged, loved, appreciated for the gifts that they gave you, as well as acknowledging, I'm okay now. I'm the grown person. I can take charge now. And it was kind of beautiful the way you were putting that out there, because oftentimes we do beat ourselves up for those things too. Like you said, like that negative talk comes from this really deeply held belief. And for whatever reason, we're not willing to give ourselves the same amount of grace. Like if your actual child walked up to you and said some of those things, hopefully you wouldn't be mad at your child. If your child was having a bad time, you'd be really gracious and loving and try to, it's okay, it'll be okay. Yeah. But offering that to ourselves can be a little more challenging. But it's a very good reminder, because we do need to be reminded to be so grateful for those experiences. They shaped who we are. But also then being able to let them go. I don't think you're right. I don't think you can let them go until you accept love on them and then go, all right, I'm moving on now.
So this brings up for me, because Nicole and I did some work on this a long time ago, because I used to have the belief that I was really horrible at finances. I was really horrible at numbers, and it's not true. I've always I was a dorky child who loved to balance checkbooks. Like I love balancing checkbooks. It wasn't that I was bad at finances. It wasn't that I was bad at numbers. It was that I had a belief that was placed on me from somewhere else that I needed to acknowledge. And it was really interesting, because when you finally got through to me that I wasn't bad at math, you started, or I wasn't bad at finances in particular, you started calling me out every time I'd say, oh, I'm bad at that. Oh, I don't get it. And in one of the business groups that I was in, the financial people in the group, they would essentially dumb down their presentations and put less numbers in, because they knew that I was like, and I would just gloss over. And it was more that I glossed over because I was just like, whatever, I don't care. But like the perception, because of the words that were coming out of my mouth, was that I was bad at numbers. So they were trying to help me out. And when I started changing my vocabulary and changing the words that I was saying, I actually made an announcement to the group, and I was like, you know what? I've held this belief for a really long time that I'm bad at this, and I'm not bad at this. I'm not stupid. I totally get it. And I told everybody in the group, and the financial people in the group were kind of like, I don't know what to do now, because it was part of the shtick. Like it was legit part of the shtick that everybody would say, oh, well, Jen's bad at math, Jen's bad at numbers, so I'm going to skip over this part. And it really called attention for me to how much I had ingrained that belief into everyone around me, because it was a belief that I had held so deeply for myself. And when I started letting go of it, everybody else had to start letting go of it too. And they didn't know how to do that because they didn't know how to acknowledge. And like, it was a process, is what I'm saying, is that once you start letting go of those things, just recognize that there might be people around you that are like, I don't know what to do with this. So you might have to walk through that with them as well, because that's also part of your spiritual journey.
Yeah. Well, and like we've talked about before, it could be some people in your life for a reason, right? Sometimes we're talking about mirrors. Maybe they were supposed to be that mirror. So you heard what you were saying back to you over and over and over again until you were like, okay, well, you've served your purpose. If they can't acknowledge and accept where you're at now, that's okay. They did you a service. They helped you out. They showed you your shit.
Please don't do that. I don't need to see my shit any more than I already do.
I want to reiterate that what you might hear when this happens is you might also hear things like, well, that's not you. And it isn't just about negatively held beliefs. It might be when you try something new. So for me, I've been known as the numbers whisperer a very long time. And then as I've expanded into doing more work with creatives and I have this other stuff, at first I heard, well, but that's not who you are. And at first it made me mad. What do you mean that's not who I am? And so instead, what I taking my own advice, I learned how to say, that's not who I was. That's not what I was. But today, this is what I choose, and this is what I want to become. Will you support me in that journey? Someone who really cares about you will. And if they may need some reminders, grace is good for everybody, right? If they can't, then maybe that's time your paths diverge. However, keep in mind for them, they also have a pattern in their head. And to Jen's point about like, oh, these people suddenly had to change, help them. Don't get mad. Just say, yeah, that's what it was. We can all acknowledge it. It's just information. That's another thing I like to tell people about when they might feel shame about their numbers.
This is my favorite.
They might feel shame about their numbers. Like, you should have made more money, or I don't want to show this to you, or, oh my God, what are you going to think? And I always say, the sky is blue, grass is green, and these are your numbers. Those are all pieces of information. If I want to go on a hike, I check the weather first, right? So if it's a blizzard and there's no visibility, which can happen in Minnesota, I'm not going to go on a hike that day. If it's sunny and 70, perfect day. I don't say, oh, this is bad because, I don't cast, evil or shameful thoughts about snow. It just is. I live in Minnesota. And on the days that are beautiful, I simply go, yeah, celebrate, go outside. So with your numbers, when you start to look at them, I see a lot of people feel shame. It's just information we're going to use. There's no shame attached to it. I don't have time, energy, or interest in judging you. Okay. And whoever you work with on finances, if they do, get someone else, because they should not have the time, energy, and interest in judging you. It is simply information. It's where we're starting this moment. You tell me where you want to go and we figure out a plan to get there.
Yeah. I love that. See, and I don't actually think you're working with creatives is vastly different than working with all the woo people, because living with two very, very creative, artistic people, that is their woo spot. Like they are like channeling, they are connected to the universe when they're creating. It's the most beautiful thing. So I feel like this must have felt like a really, not only a natural progression, but also there's so many creative people that need that support. The starving artist thing, it just needs to go away. There's so many opportunities now for creatives to be able to earn a living doing the thing that they love. And I absolutely love that you work with creatives and woo people, because we all need it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. That's like, they are my people because I can relate and speak to it. We share a common ground, and we can start there and move from that point.
So I have one more question for you. Did you need to ask something, Jen?
Well, I was just going to say that Nicole has a very, very, a much larger financial past. She worked in large corporations. She worked in big business settings. So she hasn't always worked in the creative and woo realm. And so she went from working in those situations that I want nothing to do with.
Very corporate,
Yes.
Investment banking, chief financial officer, that type of thing. Yes.
Yeah, she was all fancy and had all the titles. And she's still all fancy, just fancy in a different way. But so she has come a long way in going from corporate setting to coming into working with people in the woo and creative realm. Like, she knows her stuff. Like, I would put Nicole up against any financial person, and I would bet on her any day. So
love that.
Just wanted to add that little nugget in there.
Well, this is a perfect segue into the last question that I was going to ask, which is why you call yourself a tree-hugging capitalist. I love that.
Yes, I coined that phrase years ago because why do I call myself that? Well, I am a tree hugger. I believe in the environment. I believe in taking care of the environment. I believe in taking care of people. So like all the things you think of when you hear tree hugger, you think, I care about causes in the world. I want people to have equal opportunity and be treated well, the planet to be taken care of, all those tree hugging things. I believe in that, and I try to make choices within my business. Like I said, I do give back programs. I support Kiva. When I have product offerings, I look at what's going to have the least carbon footprint, right? You can look at products that you do more print on demand than big bulk orders, because with big bulk orders of things, there's waste. There just is, right? So there's lots of ways we can choose to be environmentally friendly, little ways and big ways. Then I throw in the capitalist thing and people's heads start spinning. Like, wait a minute.
It seems like such a dirty word right now, even though when you really dig into it, I mean, I also have a Gen Zer in my house, so, it's like capitalism.
Yeah. Well, the reality is now we get back to, it gives me a chance to talk about that energy exchange again. And to me, capitalism is simply being given a fair return in energy for the work that you've done. And in fact, capitalism, real capitalism, not like where, people are ripping people off and not paying. See, to me, in an environment where someone's not getting paid a fair wage, that's not capitalism anymore. That's just opportunism, right? That's a really good point. That's, it's not in my belief, a true capitalist environment. You get paid fairly for the work you've done. And when we do that, when we pay people fairly for the work that they've done and provide them a safe environment, a rising tide lifts all boats. So, okay, I used to live in Asia. I saw sweatshop environments. I saw labor practices that were terrible. And I know we have, a lot of issues south of the border. So the number one thing we can do to make that better is to push for those places to have better work conditions. To, like in Bangladesh, as I don't know how many years ago now, when they had the warehouses or the places where they were doing clothing manufacturing, and they weren't safe buildings. Okay, so when they had the earthquake, a bunch of people died. So if you're looking at clothing, there's something called WRAP certified, and what it means is that even though it's not within this country where we have lots of OSHA laws and all of that, they've gone and independently certified these are safe working conditions, because then we're ensuring there's an equal exchange. If I'm asking someone to come to work every day and I'm paying them, let's say, quote, a living wage, that's the first step. But I ask them to do it in an incredibly dangerous situation. Now it's not equal anymore, right? If I say, okay, I'm going to pay you to be sitting at, at a spot sewing. Okay. And here's a fair wage. Oh, by the way, if there's an earthquake, you're going to die because I don't have a safe building. No.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, having livable, fair wages and safe working conditions, wherever you may be, to me, that is really what capitalism is. And when we do that, we all win.
I love that. I've been doing some financial deep diving lately too, and there was some good points brought up about that. Like you said earlier, money is a tool. When you have access to that tool, it makes helping easier. It also makes being able to make conscious choices that align with your morals and values easier, which I thought was an excellent point, because I agree with you on, I'm also a tree hugger. Literally, I just, they're beautiful.
I have a big oak in my backyard. I hug it.
Yes.
I've even named it.
That is a pretty sweet tree.
But I like your spin on the capitalism thing, because it's true. There is, like, when there's a problem, we tend to really focus on the thing, like the one thing that we think that's the problem. I'm going to identify this one problem. But the reality is all systems can be abused. Any type of system that we're working on, and having such a large amount of people under this current system in this country, there's always going to be an opportunity for people to use it for good and people to use it for not so great things. So I like that you put that perspective on it, where we need to, instead of like, this is the problem, and if as long as this big thing is changed, everything else will be fine. Well, no, we've got our own personal role we can play in that. And like you're saying, I feel like if you are creating this abundance for yourself, what better tools do you have than to help every other aspect of the people around you? And I love that perspective. I feel like I should also call myself a tree hugging capitalist now.
Yay!
Thanks
I love
for
it.
that perspective.
I love it. And because in capitalism, true capitalism, it's an equal exchange, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we've been talking about this whole interview. Yeah. Equal exchange. And as a tree hugging capitalist, you don't just look at the person, you look at what's good for the planet, what's good holistically, not just in this one small exchange. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm a tree hugging capitalist and proud of it.
I love that.
For all the other soon to be tree hugging capitalists, or those who don't know where they're at yet, I know, because this is how I met you, that you are an amazing author. I met you in a writer's group years and years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And you have some books and some resources that I think people need to hear about. So do you want to talk a little bit about the books you've written and the cards that you have? And then we'll talk a little bit more about your prosperity grids too.
So first book I wrote is called How to Be a Finance Rockstar. Who doesn't want to be a rock star, right? So it was really geared towards getting people past that fear of numbers or the thought I can't do it. So it's a how-to book for a small business owner in your basic finances. It's what I do when I teach people. You can buy it on Amazon or buy it directly from me if you want a signed copy. The second book I wrote, because I'm a huge science fiction geek, and I found story helps me tell and educate, right? I wrote a science fiction business book / graphic novel.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. I didn't know about that one.
So, yes, and it's my alter ego. Her name's Brenna Rain. She has an outfit. I do. I cosplay Brenna.
That's awesome.
And Brenna's a swashbuckling starship captain who captures bounties. And book is some of her adventures, and it teaches you business concepts along the way. So that was my second book. And then I wrote a deck of cards. They're called the Money Mantra cards. And I like to say it's as if I'm in your ear whispering. So each card has one of my sayings and things like, profit is not a luxury. Divas never work for free. Neither should you. And it has little graphics. In both of these cases, I hired artists. I paid them fair market rates. In fact, one of the artists I kept saying, raise your rates, raise your rates, raise your rates. And she finally did. because I'm like, I'm not paying you enough, but I won't pay more than everyone else. So you got to raise your rates. And so the mantra cards have these fun little illustrations on them. I have Maxine the Math Mutt. I have the Number Muncher, who is he looks kind of like a Godzilla that's coming to get your numbers. I have Fluffy the Finance Feline, so these fun little characters, right? And so those are tools that I have that people can get, they can have with them. They're very budget friendly. So part of my goal was to make things accessible to people. $20 for a book. If you can't afford $20 to figure out your finances, you need to rethink your business. Okay? Mm-hmm. Just that simple, right? If you can't afford $20, we have problems. So that's stuff now, most recently. And Jen was helped me bring this to fruition, because this is part of where but that's not you thing, Tammy, that Jen and I mentioned earlier, mm-hmm. is, I kept thinking, well, that's not numbersy enough. And Jen's like, Nicole, just listen to your guides. Listen to those inner voices. And I finally said, okay, fine. And I created my own prosperity grid. So I did a bunch of research on just grids in general, sacred geometry, stones, not just what stones there are, but what chakras they tune into, what are the frequencies, what are they used for. I did a ton of research, right?
Yes,
I went all in. And I created a grid that is specifically set up for prosperity. And there's a whole process, the outer ring is all about clearing your chakras. Because when I was looking at grids, I'm like, none of these start with balance. So back to that balance thing. So you need to be in alignment before you can go any further. Mm-hmm. So that's that's the outer ring, and then it moves inward to what is your goal. So that's something I now offer. I have a book, I have a kit, and I'm even doing a free 1-page download that talks about some stones that are really great for prosperity.
And nice. we will link to all of those things. We'll have a link for you to go to, so you can see all of her offers. You can see all of her books, everything. I will tell you that when she told me she wanted to do this prosperity grid, I asked her if she would come and speak at an event at my previous business. And the people who were in that class, I was so bummed I didn't get to be in the class because I was running the event. And everybody was like, this was amazing. And when she called me, she's like, Jen, I need to get these stones for this grid. Where do I go? And I was like, holy crap, you really dug into the research of this. She's like, I looked up sacred geometry, and I looked at this, and I looked at that, and I looked at that, and I read this book, and I read this book. And I'm like, holy crap, she knows way more about this than I do. So her grid is totally legit. I love it. It is an amazing product. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that and learning about anything that she offers, seriously, click on that link that we're going to post, because she's an amazing human being and has so much knowledge in her brain. She does not give herself enough credit for that, because she does. She has so much woo in her that she does not realize yet. That
and that's
bringing
what
those
Jen's
two
mission is.
That's right. That's what Jen has done for me.
It's a good exchange.
And
there you go. See?
And you are bringing everything into balance, though. You're bringing the financial piece and the woo piece, bringing that stuff into a space where people can find balance there. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things that you help people with. I know that you've helped me with that immensely. So like I said, I'm so stinking grateful for you. And I'm so glad that we could have you on the show today.
Absolutely.
And I truly hope that everybody reaches out to you, because you are just so helpful. You're so helpful.
I'm going to give up one link. If you can do one link on air, it's a bit.ly link. So then it's really easy to remember. It's bit.ly. So bit.ly /prosper 2024.
Sweet.
Really easy to remember. bit.ly /prosper 2024. And that will have all the other links that you need.
Perfect.
Yeah. Easy. Then
comments too.
People can remember.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you having me. And like I said, the grid would not have happened without Jenn just saying, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And finally I'm like, all right, fine. And I'm so glad I did it because it felt so fulfilling and like another part of myself had been let out into the world, and it felt great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really was looking forward to this also. And Jenn has talked a lot about you and all the things that you've supported and helped her with, but it was cool to hear your perspective on some of these things. I think people need to know this. I think this is really important information, and the idea that this is available for everybody. Prosperity, success, not feeling terrible about money you have, all of that is available for everybody.
Right.
So I love that.
Yes.
Thank you so
Woo
much
or
for
not.
coming today. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
All right. Well, thanks
Thank you again.
everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
see y'all later.
See everyone later.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.